we have here? We have a vapor compression refrigeration system that uses the arrangement as shown here in this figure. So this is obviously multi-stage compression. It's not a cascading process because we have a flash chamber and a direct contact heat exchanger. So basically means that the refrigerant is going to be the same throughout. Okay, so and coming back to the question, so the system uses the arrangement shown in the figure, and it has a two-stage compression with intercooling between the stages. Good. Refrigerant R134A is a working fluid, as expected. You have just one working fluid for the entire cycle, and saturated vapor at minus 32 degrees Celsius enters the first compressor stage. So when we look at this, this compressor here at the bottom is what's called as a first stage compressor, and the one at the top is called the second stage compressor. So here we have been provided with the saturation temperature, or we have been provided with the state of uh, the refrigerant entering the compressor here. So we're talking about state one, right? We are saying that it's saturated vapor as seen from the TS diagram, and the Tsat is minus 32 degrees Celsius. So when you go to the saturation table, you will be able to identify the properties by just looking at this temperature. Okay, so this is the saturation temperature here. Then the flash chamber and the direct contact heat exchanger, they operate at 5 bar. So we're saying that the pressure here is 5 bar and the pressure here is 5 bar. If you recall, we are having a direct contact heat exchanger right here. So the pressure of state 9 should be equal to the pressure of state 2. So state 2, state 3, state 9, state 6, state 7, all these are on a constant pressure line, and the pressure is 5 bar. Okay, so what else is given? The condenser pressure is 14 bar. All right, so this is the condenser. We just have one condenser right here, and this pressure is 14 bar. Okay, so 4 to 5 is again a constant pressure heat rejection. Now, saturated liquid streams at 14 and 5 bar enter the high and the low pressure expansion valves respectively. So we are talking about the entrance point of the expansion valves, and we have been told that these are both saturated liquid, and of course they will be at the condenser pressure 14 bar and the pressure of the feed flash chamber, which is 5 bar. Okay, so we know we have been defined the states 5, 7, 1, and we have some other information about the rest of it. Now, here we have been told that the compressor operates isentropically. So 1 to 2 and 3 to 4 are isentropic compression processes. Okay, good for us. It's easier to solve then. And the refrigeration capacity is 12 tons. Okay, so Qn is given as 12 tons. So before we make use of it, we may have to convert that into kilowatt. If this appears in the exam, I will provide you the conversion, right? So 1 ton is 211 kilojoule per minute. So that conversion will be provided to you, or I will write it in the formula sheet so you can look through it. Now, for all the information that's given here, we need to determine the power input to each compressor. We need WC1 and WC2, and then the COP. Well, the thing is, once you calculate the power input to the compressor, the COP, which is beta, it's rather easy to obtain because we have been provided with QN, and we also will be calculating WC and WC1 and WC2 in part A. All right, so this is what we have, and we need to first determine a couple of things before we can go ahead and calculate the work input to the compressor. So how do we start this problem? What do we determine first? How do we approach this problem here? What's the first thing that you will go and determine?
H1.
Exactly,
Enthalpies. Enthalpies.
exactly. The first thing that you would need is the enthalpies, right? Because we need enthalpies before we can calculate any work inputs. We also will need the mass flow rates because we need to calculate the power input to the compressor in kilowatt and not in terms of kilojoule per kilogram. So the first obvious thing is the enthalpies, and the easiest place to start it is with state one. Okay, so we have we know it's the saturated vapor. We know the saturation temperature. So it's just a matter of going to the tables for R134A and determining the properties. Now it's a lot of students tend to make this mistake here. Since you are coming from chapter 9, you want to use ideal gas equation everywhere. But remember that ideal gas equation does not apply in the superheated vapor region. Okay, ideal gas equation will apply only for certain cases, and for certain cases where the pressures are lower, the temperatures are high relative to the critical pressure and temperature for that substance. And for R134A, if I want to plot it in the same graph, it would be somewhere here. Okay, and we don't deal with these states when we're dealing with the refrigeration cycle. So the simple point is, don't use uh, the ideal gas equation when you're dealing with vapor compression. Okay, these superheated vapors are not ideal gas at all. If you want to check, well, you can do a quick comparison and see how much of a difference it comes out. And anyway, we don't have the ideal gas tables for R134A, so don't just try to force things. Okay, remember that. So coming back here, we have tables for R134A, just like we had saturation tables for water, okay, for steam, in fact. So here we have the temperature, we have the Tsat given. So it's just a matter of going to the saturation tables and getting the value of Sg at the saturation temperature of minus 32 degrees Celsius. So you pick up the values for Sg and Hg, and that's S1 and H1 for you. Now we know that 1 to 2 is an isentropic compression process, right? That's what's given in the question. So we know the value of S1, right? And we know that S2, we know that the state 2 is superheated vapor. So since S1 is equal to S2 is already known, we got to make use of this entropy for state 2 and combine that with the pressure of state 2, right? Which is 5 bar, because it's the same pressure of the direct contact heat exchanger and the flash chamber. So by using these two properties, we can locate state 2 and then through interpolation determine the enthalpy at state 2. This is something that you'll get from superheated vapor tables. Okay, these tables are also there for R134A. So once you do that, this is the value for H2 that you get. Now we have H1 and H2. Now let's go and try to find the other easy stuff. The most obvious stuff is the H5, H6, and H7, right? So these are the easy ones to get. So let's get H5 at so we know the pressure here of the condenser, it's 14 bar. And we also have been told that the entrance to the expansion valve is saturated liquid. So H5 is simply HF at 14 bar. So this is the value that we get. Now we know that expansion valve is an isenthalpic device. So H6 will always be equal to H5, right? The enthalpies at the entry and exit of an expansion valve will always be equal. So that's how we get H6 as well. So we got H5, we got H6. Now remember, the liquid component of this state 6, right, which is the liquid vapor mixture, ends up going towards the evaporator. The rest is used and sent to the direct contact heat exchanger. So we need to sort of determine the value of X, right? We need to determine the quality at state 6. And whenever you have a mixture, right, the enthalpy of a mixture would simply be equal to HF plus X times HFG. Okay, so what we need to do is, we know the pressure here, we know it's 5 bar. So we need to go to 5 bar and get HF and get the value of Hg or HFG from there. And basically, since we know the value of H6, which is given here, which is equal to H5, we need to use that to determine the quality at state 6. Okay, that will tell us how much of it is liquid and how much of it is vapor. Okay, so we get these values for Hg and Hf at 5 bar, and by making use of the enthalpy formula for a saturated mixture, we can calculate X6. So we have H6, we have Hf and Hg, right? Plug in these numbers and we get an X6 of 0.292. So this means that about 30% of the mass flow rate of the initial mass flow rate m.3 is vapor, and it ends up going to the direct contact heat exchanger. The remaining 70%, or close to slightly more than 70%, it goes towards the evaporator and takes care of the cooling load. Okay, so this is what we ultimately get here. Now we have H1, H2, H5, H6. Now we need to determine H7 as well. Since we already know HF at 5 bar, so H7 is saturated liquid, so it's the same thing, right? It's simply HF at 5 bar. And for an isenthalpic device, which is the expansion valve, we know that H8 will also be equal to H7. Okay, so this is all what we know. Apart from this, we also know that state 9 is saturated vapor, so you can easily determine state 9 from here. State 9 is basically Hg at 5 bar. Okay, so that also can be known. We just need to determine enthalpy at state 3 and enthalpy at state 4. Okay, any questions here? Any questions up to this point? All right, if no questions, then can someone tell me how can we determine enthalpy at state 3? We have enthalpy at state 2, we have enthalpy at state 9.
By energy balance, sir.
Yes, excellent. We just need to apply energy balance to the direct contact heat exchanger. So we already have S9, we have S2 already from before. So we need to apply the energy balance to this direct contact heat exchanger. So for heat exchanger, it's simply mass times the enthalpy that's coming in should be equal to the mass times enthalpy that's going out. Okay, so here we have 2 inlet and 1 exit. All right, so the inlet is one inlet as m dot, let's say m dot 9 times h9 plus the other inlet is m dot 2 times h2. Okay, and we have a single outlet which is m dot 3 times h3. All right, good. Okay, so here we can write m dot 9 and m dot 2 in terms of m dot 3. Okay, so if you look at m dot 9, m dot 9 is basically the vapor part, right? So m dot 3 is what goes through here, and it reaches is the same as m dot 6, and some part of it, x times m dot 3, goes to the direct contact heat exchanger. The rest, which is 1 minus x times m dot 3, goes through the expansion valve, goes through the evaporator, and then comes out at the compressor. So m dot 9 is x times m dot 3, and m dot 2 is 1 minus x times m dot 3. Okay, so you can cancel out m dot 3 from this equation, and what we have left is x times h9 plus 1 minus x times h2 is equal to h3. We have x values, x is basically x6. We have x, we have h9, we have h2. So we can just plug in the numbers and determine the enthalpy at state 3. So this is what we have from the energy balance. We can plug in the numbers for each of these, and this is what we get for H3. Now, once we get H3, determining H4 is very straightforward, right? So you have enthalpy at state 3. We also know the pressure of state 3. The pressure of state 3 is same as 5 bar, same as the pressure of the two streams that are coming in. So using this pressure and enthalpy, we can locate state 3 and determine its entropy. And the entropy at state 3 will be equal to state 4 because this is again an isentropic compression process. And now for state 4, we know the pressure at state 4, we know its entropy. So using that, we can locate state 4 and by interpolation, determine the enthalpy at state 4. Okay, so this would come out to be 285.1. So this certainly is a little bit more involved. So we will not be asking you to determine, let's say, the entropy at state 4 most likely in an exam, because I mean this will be asked in a homework, for example, right? Because it takes a lot of time. We can ask you the enthalpies at other states though. So once we have H4, we have basically determined the enthalpies at all other states. So all that we need is the mass flow rates now. Any idea how can we get the mass flow rates? The mass flow rate that's going through this compressor and the mass flow rate through the second compressor.
By energy balance.
By applying energy balance where? It's going to come through energy balance. That's the right answer. But to which component do we apply?
Doctor, using QN?
Yes. Yes, both of you are correct. We need to use QN, right? Or apply energy balance to the evaporator. So Qn is simply equal to m.1 times h1 minus h8. We have h1, we have h8. We also have Qn. So we can get m.1 from here. Okay. Remember to convert Qn from tons of refrigeration into kilowatt, and you do that by multiplying by 211 and divide by 60, right? Because this is kilojoule per minute. So once you do that calculation, we get m.1, 0.269. Now we also need to determine the ratio between m.1 and m.3. Okay, so if you look at m.1, m.1, or which is same as m.2, this is basically equal to 1 minus x times m.3. Okay, and we need to actually determine m.3 now that we have m.1. And the reason we need m.3 is because that's the master rate that goes through the second stage compressor. So m.3 would simply be equal to m.1 by 1 minus x. We have both of these numbers, so you can plug them in and get m.3 as well. So when you do so, we get m.3, which certainly would be higher, and will be 0.38 kilogram per second. Now, with this information, it's calculating the compressor work input is very straightforward. So we have the mass flow rate, we have the enthalpies, plug them in, and this is what we get for the first stage. For the second compressor stage, again, the mass flow rate is different. You got to be careful about the mass flow rate here, but the enthalpies, you know, H4 and H3, and we already determined them. So this comes out to be slightly lower. Okay, and these are the two compressor work inputs. We already know Qn, so calculating beta is very straightforward. So beta is simply convert the 12 tons into kilowatt and divide that by the sum of the compressor work inputs. Comes out to be 2.26.